Hi, everyone, and welcome to joining us for this webinar about adapting to the evolution of MCAT summer programs. It's kind of surreal. I felt like we met here a year ago to discuss this same topic, and a year later, we didn't know we'd kind of be in a similar situation. And I'm sure you had a lot of questions, 12 months ago when you're deciding or trying to figure out what to do next, and probably have similar questions this year as well. And so we brought this kind of amazing group together. I'm so excited to spend time with some of the folks here. So we'll jump into introductions in just a bit to discuss the ins and outs of some of the challenges we faced last summer and things we're thinking about doing differently for the summer ahead. But I guess the one thing I want to prime you with is, if you are here live, this is all for you. We want to hear from you, the advisors, the ones who have questions. We want to kind of drive this conversation towards your needs and really figure out how we can all help each other and build a community where we can share ideas, share learnings, and figure out what's best for our students. So I will do my best as a facilitator, as the co-host, to kind of bring you into the conversation. So please use the chat, tell us what your questions are, and we'll make sure we cover as many of them as we can in the next 60 minutes. But that being said, I'd love to jump into a quick round of introductions. We can start with my co-host, Chris Murner, who's our Director of Instructional Design here at Kaplan. Chris, what do you think today is going to be all about?
Well, I think, today is all about creating the best experience for your students and helping them envision themselves as med students, right? So how do you do that when everything kind of pivots underneath you and you have to move your program from an established, maybe not quite like clockwork, but close to clockwork program that you've been running for years on the ground to something that's hybrid or online? And I've been so inspired to meet these two wonderful women here who have programs in Florida where they really reimagined what that looked like last year. And they sat in the same seats you're sitting in now, thinking about, we are now dealing with a pandemic and what are we possibly going to do to support our students and our community? And they really did a fantastic job. And I just can't wait to hear them share their stories and for all of us to lean in and learn together. So I'm really excited to be here, Dennis. This is great to take what we've learned, and we certainly didn't think we'd be here this year, but here we are rolling with it yet again. So really excited to learn today.
Awesome. And Kim, who is our Director of Kaplan Partner Solutions. I know you've managed a ton of programs, but yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to be part of this conversation. My team works with programs like Shirley's, like Nanette's across the country, and going into last summer, I think these are two programs that are great examples of reuse the word reimagined how to support students on this medical journey, and I think now is the time for a lot of programs who struggled over the summer, either canceling the program or maybe didn't feel like they had the right resources to really listen to their stories and not have to reinvent the wheel. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. And without further ado, our two guests of honor, or our two, panelists today. Shirley, would you like to say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shirley Smith. I direct the Office of Student Diversity and Enrichment at Morsani College of Medicine, which is at the University of South Florida. I'm really excited to be here. The title of partners it's not a title, it's a reality in the relationship that we have with Kaplan. And it's like none other. And I think if you knew who our area rep was, you'd understand why it is special. And we try to carry that forward towards our students.
I mean, that's been super evident in every minute I've spent with you already, Shirley. So I'm really, really excited to dig into a little bit more in terms of the TLC, the nurturing that you provide your students. So we'll get into that in a bit. And Nanette, hello.
Yes, good afternoon and greetings from Miami, Florida. My name is Nanette Vega. My pronouns are she, and hers, and I serve as assistant professor for medical education and assistant dean for diversity, inclusion, and community engagement at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. Go Canes. And, you know, COVID-19 halted our ability to meet in person, but it didn't keep us from offering the summer programs. And we're thankful to the partnership we have with Kaplan, who already had a process in place. So we build around that model. And again, we just reimagined what was, you know, seemed impossible previously, and we were able to develop a program to meet the needs of our students. And we're proud of the product that we produced, and we are going remote yet again. And so now we have an opportunity again to adjust the program and the resources to meet the needs of our community. And I look forward to the conversation today.
That's awesome. And you touched upon a word that came up a lot in our conversation so far, and that was the word reimagine. It's a word that you've made your staff really prioritize, because that's been, I wouldn't even say the challenge, right? That's been the exciting part about what we faced this summer and what we faced last summer. So can we, you shared a little bit about what you're planning to do this summer already, and congratulations on kind of jumping into this endeavor again. But can you talk to us a little bit more about your program goals this year? Maybe an overview. You know, how many students are we planning to support this year?
Sure. So at the University of Miami, we offer the Medical Scholars Program. It's has a long, rich history at the University of Miami, spanning over 30 years. And the goal is to develop the next generation of physicians that's more representative of our diverse community. And typically in a given year, for 7 weeks, we host students from all around the country who are aspiring to become physicians, both high school and college students. And in previous years, we were able to sponsor 75 students because all these programs are fully funded through our division and department and the Dean of Medical Education's office. But because we went remote this year, we were able to offer services to an additional 100 students. We didn't have the limitation of classroom size or having to think about paying for housing, transportation, parking, and such. And so we were really able to reach a more broader group of students that maybe wouldn't have access to resources, you know, had this not happened. And I know there was a lot of anxiety. You know, I don't want to say that we weren't anxious about this approach. You know, there were a lot of sleepless nights and team meetings to make this happen. But what I challenged our team to do is, again, to reimagine the possibilities, because there were a lot of things that we previously wanted to do, but maybe we're limited because of, you know, insert reason. And so this was an opportunity for us to make changes to the program that the students can benefit from. So we really looked at adjusting, you know, what it would look like to learn from home. We looked at our instructional design. We considered bandwidth issues. I mean, there were so many things we had to consider, so many moving parts. But I'm proud to say that in the 7 weeks, we didn't lose one student. And I think that is a testament to the community that we built, because it's much more than just the course, right? We offer the MCAT course in addition to other programs that we build around the Medical Scholars Program. We also offered one-on-one academic advising meetings and use different programs to engage our students outside the classroom. And we also use teaching assistants, so current medical students, to help with the transition and advising of the students. So those are some of the things that we did. And this year we are open for applications. We have already surpassed our numbers from last year. Application deadlines are in March, and we're looking forward to another wonderful year. And we're adding additional courses based on the evaluations received from last summer. So exciting time. And again, it's just reframing, looking at this as an opportunity versus a challenge.
That's so fantastic. And I love how you talk about using your medical students. I know, Shirley, you mentioned something similar when we were chatting about your community and your program. So similar to Nanette, if you can tell us kind of how you dealt with the pivot last year and how you were able to kind of change things up to be sure you could, you know, see your students as much as you can possibly get your arms around them virtually.
I mean, truth be told, you know, our students engage Kaplan, these are students we have been interacting with for 3 to 4 years already. So we have a really good relationship. Kaplan's the cherry on top. Kaplan is you are prepared, you've done the coursework, you've got the experiences, everything on your CV is done, it's on lock. Next is Kaplan. This is your step exam. So we are demanding undivided attention. And there was no anxiety about it because Kaplan's already done this. The thing that had to be different was like, how are we going to support the students during that? And when it was our regular brick and mortar, we physically could be present because they would hold their class on campus. We would be able to walk in, see who's there, touch them, know who's not present, check in with them. Where are you? Some of our learners like, I want to learn on my own. Okay, let us know. So being online, we had to really kind of reimagine how we were going to have those touch points to support people. And, you know, it just required thinking a little different, using our Teams feature. USF, or Morsani College of Medicine, had been a Teams school for over a year already. So we were very familiar with that. It was already ingrained in the university structure. So it was really just people taking advantage of what was already present that people were scared to jump into, and making appointments with students on Teams. Today, they just make the appointments and we talk. And realizing one-on-one is important, seeing people, hearing their stories, getting them a chance to tell you how they're doing, not just about school, but their life, you know, so that, because school has to fit into their lives for them to be successful. And so it was really about finding a way to continue to do that. And I think we were highly successful in doing that.
And I think you were planning to potentially engage even more students outside of your cohort. Is that correct? What are
Yes.
some of, can you talk a little bit more about your program goals? And
Yeah, you know, I mean, similar to University of Miami, diversity offices at all medical schools are looking to, in workforce diversity, to have a healthcare workforce that aligns with our population. And it's really to address health disparities, to eliminate health inequities. You know, research shows people of color get better care when they're taught by a physician who looks like them. And we are still trying to solve that problem in a number of different ways, but one way is to increase the diversity of the workforce. And so we, the university, we're looking into our other student organizations. Oh, I always have these, like, I tell people this, there's a method to my plan. So I advise the 2 largest minority student undergrad organizations, and we're about to advise another, and we're like, yes, because now we can embed ourselves in their structure. Because sometimes you got to give student the medicine when they don't know they need it, but they want it, but you got to give it to them. You got to make them take it. So I partnered with these organizations. I'm their advisor. And as their advisor, I was like, I have this opportunity for you. What do you want to do with it? How are you going to prepare your members to take advantage of this opportunity? How is this going to benefit you as an organization, about showing that you're meeting the goal of this organization to diversify the workforce? What support are you going to give to your members as they be part of this organization and take advantage of joining a Kaplan course? And so we're really excited about it. The student orgs, I'm always about how to every endeavor to give students an opportunity to display their own leadership skills, you know, because they need that, right? And so these student leaders get to partner with us. We let them champion this, and they get to take ownership of what they're providing. And we get the opportunity to be part of their journey and their success. It's not my success. We just celebrate it with them. And so I'm really excited to see how this goes. For my student in the student orgs, I'm telling them, I'm like, if you're not ready, I'm gonna tell you not to come. I mean, I believe you can be successful, but if you're not dedicated, don't spend your money. Save your money. Kaplan's going to be here, med school's going to be here, but this is your step exam. You need to be dedicated time. And if you're taking summer classes, it's not going to go well. And so I do believe in partnering with students individual. They need individual attention. And I think that's what our programs provide for students, and why we're able to hold on to them. Because it's probably for the first time somebody is really saying, you concerned about me as an individual, not just numbers.
That's awesome. Kim, I know you want to jump in about your experience.
Yeah, I think in talking to a lot of programs, I think one kind of issue that Nanette and Shirley have talked about is around the relationship. And so what we've heard, some of the more successful programs is really thinking outside the box of what the online experience can be. I think there's a general perception that, oh, it's another Zoom call, or it's not somebody, seeing you sitting at your desk. And so in a lot of the programs, again, last summer that were able to transition successfully, I think they really thought about how to build those relationships. So to Shirley's point, one-on-one meetings. I've had partners programs say they actually developed stronger relationships with their students because they had to use the one-on-one time. It wasn't group. It wasn't just walking into the classroom and seeing everybody and saying, hey. It was actually having to force that one-on-one time and get to know the students in a different way. I think we've also had programs that have talked about hiring counselors or therapists to talk through, especially right now, there's so many issues, so many challenges, providing that space. And if that's something, because you don't have to provide housing, that you can provide that as a different option. I think that those investments have gone a long way with our program, with programs that we've worked with, and have been impactful. So, I think really it's thinking about your student population, what you want to achieve, and not getting caught into the singular experience of being on a video call, but how can you kind of blow that out into a more meaningful experience for students? And I think with, obviously it can happen, as Nanette and Shirley have done.
Yeah.
It's just really putting some thought into it.
I mean, all I was thinking this whole time was I need more Shirley in my life telling me like, hey, you got to put the work in. And if you don't, it's okay. You don't have to be a doctor. You can be something else, It's just, and Shirley, you've given them just a real, I wouldn't even call it tough love. It's just reality, right? It's putting things in perspective and making sure they understand what's at stake and how to take them there. But to your point, Kim, we've been hearing that too. Chris, I mean, we've been working with a number of programs in the past, year. And what's the science behind all that? We talked about hybrid, we've talked about, but I do feel like things are more accessible. Things are getting closer together. Is it just expectations have changed? I don't know, Chris, if you have some thoughts there, but I've always wondered that. I want to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just around driving student success, I think, there's a lot of research, that talks about online, particularly students needing to be known, right? The value of feeling seen and being met where you are. And I think both of these programs have done an excellent job of considering the holistic value of education and not just the curriculum, right? I mean, we've had a long history at Kaplan of MCAT prep, right? There's content, there's strategy, there's the, the skills you need to be able to master in critical thinking to kind of think your way up Bloom's taxonomy to be able to demonstrate that you can synthesize all of this high level information and get out of it what you need. And that's all important. And that's going to get you a better score on an exam. That's not necessarily going to make you a better physician or a better human being. And so, being able to really think about how, the MCAT, setting aside for the moment, really the value of medical education, right? And seeing people for who they are, right? Starts in the modeling that these programs do in their pipeline, right? Shirley's clever like a fox, right? In that, hey, if I can get to them when they're new students and they're 19, 20 years old and they're thinking, gee, I want to be pre-med because it's competitive and it seems like a good way to maybe, those ignoble reasons to be a physician, right? I'm going to make money, I'm going to have status, I'm going to have power and influence. And then those maybe more curious and maybe powerful ways is like, I want to help people. I want to do something good. I want to give back. How do you tie those together with the reality of the work that it takes? And how do you see them where they are and meet those varying needs, right? That, yeah, if you put in the work, it's a good, stable income. However, here's the trade-off that's very reality-based that starts now. The sacrifices you have to make. And for a lot of students, especially, in the diverse programs that you're trying to really bolster, a lot of those students are working. They have other commitments. They've been juggling 9,000 things. And, you have your post-bac students who are, putting their lives on hold to try to make a go of it now. That's a very, different sort of population to meet. And I think the ability to really flex and engage with people up the chain so they can see themselves being successful, that, both of you talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in just a sec, because I think the reality of we're all suffering from imposter syndrome, right? But the very reality that, like, it's easier for me to have that fixed when I can see women in a position that look like me, right? And so whoever, your student is, to be able to model that and say, hey, I look more like that person. I have a background like that person. I did this like that person, is so important. And I love that you both think about that chain of using your medical students and people to give back in the community to say, hey, offer a hand up and, like, tell your story, right? Stories are so powerful. And it seems like these programs and the storytelling that you've layered in there of, here's the curriculum, here's all the other clinical stuff that goes with it so you can see the reality, but then here's the life that it actually, the trade-offs that it takes, I think is what it is, right? Is seeing that student, helping them be known and helping them see themselves in an aspirational, self-efficacious way. I can do this work and get there, I think is just amazing.
Yeah. So now it's time to spill your secrets, I think, a little bit, Nanette and Shirley, right? Like, with more students to cater to or nurture, you got 100 more students this year, Nanette. You talked a little, I heard a little, some tidbits. I heard, you make them write a letter to themselves. I want to hear more about your process there. I want to hear just, and we're about 20 minutes in already. So I haven't heard much from the audience yet, but if you have questions, please bring them in. I'd love to ask Shirley and Nanette about their process a little more based on your specific interests. And but yeah, Nanette, I mean, please.
So a couple of things, and I do want to touch upon, like, imposter syndrome. There's just so much here to unpack. It's important. It was important for us to be innovative in the ways that we engage the students. And so in the implementation of visual and interactive media, outside of the classroom, we use games, and I listed some of them: Kahoots to test student knowledge of the material and lessons learned. We use a lot of the Zoom breakout rooms to formulate those relationships that they would happen organically in the classroom, but we had to kind of force that interaction in the virtual space. It was important for us, and it always is, to make sure that our staff reflects the community that we intend to serve as well. So they see themselves not only in our staff, but the faculty that we invite to share their stories and their journey to medicine. We normalize this idea that the journey to medicine is not linear for most people, and we talk about that, and that medicine is really a lifestyle choice. The MCAT exam is probably the easiest part of getting into medical school, and when I say that, they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yes, let's unpack that a little bit." To Shirley's point, it is a full-time job. They have to be totally immersed in all of this, but in order to do that, we really have to understand the students that we're serving. And some of these students are not in ideal environments to learn. Some of them have to still continue to work in order to support themselves and family. So we really have to understand and create environments that are going to set them up for success. And how do we do that? We spend a lot of time during orientation talking about themselves, right? And sharing their stories, creating these narratives around the possibilities. We dare them to dream bigger than they even imagined. And we normalize this idea of fear, right? We don't want the fear to be paralyzing. We want them to know that fear is this, it's normal to feel fear when you're kind of going on this path and this journey for the first time and no one in your family, you're the first, right? So part of what we do in orientation is I share my story. I'm a first gen student. And when, they hear my story of, first in my family to graduate from high school and college, and then I share, my career trajectory, it's to open up a conversation and the door for them to also share their story. And so we do a lot of work around intergroup dialogue to create new levels of understanding and being and relating. So it's not so isolating. So they realize they do have a community of support and they don't have to be on this journey on their own. And these, by the way, these are going to be their colleagues in the future, right? So creating a community of support, we help them to start build their board of trustees by introducing them to other faculty that look like them, have career trajectories similar to them, in order to help build their community of support. Again, the mentors that are teaching assistants that are college students also serve on their board of trustees, and we partner them. So they're also mentoring high school students while they're on this journey, because I want them to realize that they also have something to contribute, even though they feel like they're just on this journey and beginning. They are where the high school students hope to be someday, right? So there's opportunities to mentor across. And then also, again, making sure that they get that one-on-one time with us. And again, it does require work. Meeting with 100+ students in a course of 7 weeks is a huge commitment, but I will tell you that that time invested comes back threefold in their commitment. The best evaluation that I ever received was this past summer. One of the evaluations said, "This is the first time I feel seen, heard, and validated." First time ever. And that is the best part of my job, right? That we can create a space where a student can really thrive when you address some of those obstacles that would be taken for granted for the most part for other people. So I think, again, creating spaces where they can get to know one another, and it might seem like fluff, but it will create an environment where they can create a community of support, being innovative in the ways that you engage them. So using tools that are free. I mean, there's so many tools that are free that you can use to engage them, and then creating spaces where they can come together as a community to talk about just the day-to-day, struggles in navigating this process and kind of normalizing all of that. And so those are some of the things that I would say were important to us. And then setting expectations early on. So we engage them as part of orientation to come up with their own community standards of what they will all need to be fully engaged in the community. And guess what happens? They start holding each other accountable. So this whole idea of shutting off your camera, non-existent, because they start calling people in, right? Instead of calling people out, we show them how to call people in, and they start holding each other accountable, which makes our job a little easier. So setting the stage early on sets the stage and the course for the program for the 7 weeks.
I love that. Calling
A real
people.
nuts and bolts question, because this has come up with other partners. How did you, was the issue of accessibility to internet, computers, video cameras, was that a big part of how you spent time planning, or how did you tackle that for your programs?
So, it was a point, it came up, and when I'm working with undergraduate students, most of them have computers that are capable. They don't always have internet at home. Right. And so they may have been in other spaces which weren't always conducive to them engaging. And so it was kind of like we didn't have that conversation. We also didn't have the conversation about, why were people's cameras off? Maybe they were home, but they didn't want their space to be seen. They didn't feel comfortable showing their space, so it's like, oh, we need to teach them how. So while we jumped in, we did, Kaplan's got this. We just got to roll. Kaplan's got the course. We can make this happen. Then we realized there's some nuances we haven't really just weren't prepared for. And it took us coaching students, and it really just, it was about a new, I think we all had to learn these skills. I mean, we're all like, what are filters? How do you do that? What do you mean about lighting? You know, what can you see? Are you seeing just my nose? I mean, and it was just having a little grace with people and students and realizing it was a learning curve. I don't know if I could have planned for all that because we weren't all kind of ready for it, but we did have to have a little grace with students and have some conversations offline, to get a better understanding of what they were experiencing. But the digital divide is real. It's very real. And, you know, undergraduates, when they're at college campuses, they can take care of that. Being off campus, they weren't ready for it. Most of us were not. And so just trying to find safe places, making sure they were someplace safe, you know, but most of them, you know, they were still in the, you know, had to work it out, and they did.
For our students that had either bandwidth issues or accessibility issues, what we did was once a student was accepted into the program, we sent out a survey on needs, and we had to have some tough conversations about whether or not we could meet those needs within that short amount of time. And for the most part, again, being in the state of Florida, specifically in Miami, the city of Miami, specifically for K through 12, made some concessions around availability for Wi-Fi. So it just so happened that most of these students had a sibling who attended public school system, therefore had access to Wi-Fi that was dependable and accessible. Now, for those students that did not, we accommodated them. And we were able to do that because we had funding available that we didn't utilize for other things like housing and meal cards and such. Of all the students that we provided resources to, we had 2 students that did not have access to a laptop. And because we had invested in laptops that we loaned to our students, we were able to accommodate them. So again, it's making sure that you understand your population, making sure that you don't wait till the end of the program to assess needs or evaluate the program at the end. We have touch points throughout the 7 weeks where we evaluate the students, not only performance, but engagement with the program and needs. And it's through them that we're able to adapt and provide services real time. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. And then also they meet with teaching assistants who serve as our kind of middle person, and we meet on a weekly basis with our TA. So anything that happens real time during our study sessions or our meetups or our Thursday, we do Thursday Family Feud, which I host. It's a lot of fun. You just have to, be creative and innovative, and they'll tell you what they need. And the other thing I want to make note of is we also have to recognize the time that we find ourselves in, right? So while all this is happening, we have COVID, civil unrest, politics, it's like the perfect storm is happening, right? And our students are trying to live and thrive in all of that, right? So we had to stop midpoint and just create spaces where we call them brave spaces, where students can come together and just unpack some of this stuff, which was painful. But in order for them to be fully engaged and be able to retain a lot of this information, we needed to kind of uncover some of that stuff and provide a safe space for them to do so. And they were so thankful for it. And we ended up making that a part of the program on a weekly basis. And I thought they were going to, limit to an hour. Sometimes we'd be on for 2. And again, the community standards came into play where they were able to honor each other's space. They created space for others that maybe were more introvert in nature and didn't feel comfortable sharing. They used the chat to also discuss. They developed a group me outside of the program. So there were different ways that they engage, and they still keep in touch, by the way. So I think, again, making sure you understand your audience and investing the time and setting the platform in orientation, but doing the pre-work ahead of time is the ideal situation for all.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, Shirley, I want to give you a chance here to hop in with, I know your background is in social work, and you really look to support your students in a holistic way. And that talked about some of the tools and techniques and different things that they use to build their standards of community as well. And I just love to hear a little bit about how that unfolded last summer across the program for your students as well.
So I'll give you a little bit more just for the people who are on. Our summer program is the culmination of a student's undergraduate component as they prepare for medical school. So we've been working with them for a long time, and that they start their indoctrination into our program is a summer experience. And is a 6-week summer experience where we actually have med students who are their mentor instructors. And our med students are partnered with my office to help my office facilitate research on building a curriculum that can really enhance critical thinking and critical learning and independence, self-directed learning. And I remind my MD students, it's not about whether or not they pass the test, whether or not they're developing skills to learn how to acquire information and how to use information. So we have our med students are there to help my office conduct research, but they're mentors and they're instructors. So those mentors and those relationships that they start at sophomore year, freshman year, they have those med students through their whole entire time that they're I've actually had PSEP students who were in med school talk to their mentors who are now attendings. So they have this line of support for people where they can look back and say, how should I do this? What should I do? And when that senior student is unable to help, they redirect them to us. And we make sure that we keep them informed. So it is about them building a place of belonging. And I think this is one of the things I have to remind my students of color. You may never have critical mass right now to any one institution, or any place you work, but that doesn't mean you can't have belonging. You just have to create it in a very different way than what we traditionally think of. And I think COVID and Teams and being online showed us that belonging is just another space, and it's easier for people to get to. And so that was kind of the thing that we learned from this experience. And I really coach my med student mentors when they come to me with a problem about classroom management. I'm like, well, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to help that student through that challenge? How are you going to have that conversation with them? We spend so much time trying to teach med students how to, do motivational interviewing. It's a conversation. Teaching them, getting them the confidence, med students the confidence too, to walk into a conversation not knowing where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right. But having an aim in mind, but letting it grow organically. And so that's one of the things I love from the experience, is that they can look back. So by the time our students get to Kaplan in year 3, they have a whole bunch of other med students they can reach out to, and we can coordinate to give them additional assistance if they need it. But often they just need words of encouragement, and they can get that from the med students as well. So it's really exciting when I get to see a student who says that they really understood what the time was for studying for Kaplan, and they understood the focus that was required. And then they echo that to others who are around them. This is not the time to play. This is a time to do the work. This is important. I had one student, she was from Jamaica. She wanted to go to school in the United States. I'm like, that's a hard role. It's a very hard role. There's 2 ways it's going to work. Now, I think you can get there, but these are the 2 ways you got to make this work. And, I tell people there's nothing wrong with giving students difficult information. There's nothing wrong with telling them the road is difficult. And sometimes telling them it looks impossible. That's not the problem. It's not the middle part. It's the part that, do they know if you really care about them? And do you really believe they can make it happen if they change some things? That's the difference in what I do with students. I give them difficult information all the time. Yeah, the expectation is here. Can you do it? When I get my own students telling that of those students around them, then I know I've really done it. And when they could say, focus, it's challenging. If you don't want to focus, that's fine. But we have this opportunity, take advantage of it. and study. If you work it, it works, but you have to work it, right? And so if I can create such a community where they can deliver that, then my students know how to get their needs met no matter where they go.
This is so
Just
powerful.
gonna
Kim,
add-
go ahead.
yeah, I was going to add, Dennis, the idea of silver linings with COVID and moving online, challenging students to think about experiences in a different way, right? What can they learn from being online, and how can they take ownership and responsibility for that? My team talks to a lot of schools around career readiness, and to your point, you're not just hopefully creating a pipeline of doctors, but individuals who can be successful in the world regardless of their ultimate path. And there's something right now, we were talking earlier, work from home is not going away. This idea of video conferencing, telecommunication, seemingly being more isolated, but having the tools to connect, right? So helping students to understand that now and take advantage of it and learn and grow and build responsible behavior, responsible choices. It's a little cliche. There is silver lining to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Shirley.
Well, the thing that, like Nanette said, with the civil unrest and with politics and Mr. Floyd's passing, we were in teams, we were online, we were able to talk. We were ready to talk, and we didn't have to schedule a room, figure out a phone call. It being in this space at that time let us care for them in ways we probably would not have been able to care for them if we were not online. Because you were able to bring so many more people together, and for them to hear so many different perspectives, ranges of ages. I had one meeting, we had somebody who was a child of the 60s who could talk about what this felt like when they were that age and hear the sorrow in their voice. This time of COVID did that, and I mean, it gave us a chance to kind of slow down, reconnect, reprioritize, and realize engagement matters, but engagement around what our purpose is, just not for a task, right? And I think our students have gotten that. They engage now for purpose, not just a task. And I think, if not for COVID, my list keeps growing.
Yeah, I agree. And Shirley, I didn't know your background was social. My background was social work too. So we're always thinking about the student as a whole. And, what this time provided us was an opportunity to explore what that can look like in a virtual platform. So we did things like meditation online. We did things about normalizing, asking for help and, talking about mental health around civil unrest and what that looks like, and, accumulated trauma and how that plays out. And we had some rich and dynamic conversations because of this, if there is a silver lining, right? And the other thing is, I think students were able to then put words to things that maybe they didn't have the words before, because they had time to be still and reflect, not only on this, time in our history, but how this all fits into their why. And most of the students became so clear and focused on becoming a doctor because of everything that was coming to play, right? And without, they just, students that previously might have been on the fence about studying for the MCAT for 7 weeks, or, committing 7 weeks time, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, became so focused and committed because they too wanted to be a part of the change they wanted to see. And that's what I saw. And that would not have happened had this time in our history had not happened. And again, I wish it didn't happen, have to happen this way. But I think, many of our students benefited from this opportunity to be still and really reflect on their why, and it got so focused on wanting to become a physician. And then, to Shirley's point, having those tough conversations of what it was going to take for them to accomplish these goals, right? Because it's not easy. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would be a doctor. This is a calling for the chosen few who are honored to serve in that way. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a lifestyle. It will impact every aspect of their life, professionally, personally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So they really have to be in a place where they understand that it will take all of them, every part of their being. And then also having those conversations with their families too, right? Many of our students are in, budding relationships and different things like that. And, having those tough conversations about, making sure that your support system is a system that is going to elevate you, right? And support you on this journey, and really understand what it's going to take for you to be successful, not only in the MCAT, but in medical school and then residency. And then it continues from there, right? So this was an opportunity to really reflect on all of that and really focus on the why.
Oh, so powerful. I mean, I'm hearing just recurring themes. So, and silver lining aside, I feel like it's even enhanced the importance of these tenets and following these in our lives. And so setting expectations, medicine is a lifestyle choice. The MCAT's only the start. Normalizing the growth mindset, the non-linear journey, the fear, the challenges that you'll face, and know that you're not alone in all this. And then, as you said, the importance of creating the space, because it's going to be even harder for students to find it on their own now. But building that community of support, of nurturing, that one-on-one time, so that they know that there are others out there who are like them, who, and who can help them get to the next steps. I mean, that sounds like something we can all get behind and continue to support. And yeah. So, we only have about 14 minutes left. It's kind of shocking. Time is flying. I'd love to shift gears a teeny bit here. I think you've really stated some of the lessons learned and some of the things that have really become that much more important after last year's summer experience. I'd love, we have viewers here who I'm sure are wondering, how are they going to do it for this summer? How, what are they going to do differently? And so do you have a few ideas around like anything you've learned, anything you might do differently for this summer? What are some of the tips you might give the, the advisors out there who are struggling in February to figure out how they're going to make this happen in the way that they'd like to? So I'd love to, either of you can jump in, I guess.
This is a year we're going to be expanding our program. And I think it's going to be, I have my philosophy when I engage students, right? I mentor, I monitor, I medal, and I minister. So with a larger group of students, I want them to get the best out of this opportunity for them. So it's going to really structure engagement, but I don't want it to seem, you got to find a way to do it that it doesn't seem like I'm forcing you, but I care for you, right? And then this is me showing how I care for you. And that's usually about me. It's how I talk to them in the conversation about, I care for you. I really want to know I want to know you. I want to meet you. I want to get to know who you are. Just come chat. I think it's going to be really important to do that, but also track what we're doing very intensely, right? So that with such a large group, we can be able to follow up when we need to for specific needs. Our summer program has never been as big as Miami's. We're a public institution. They're really small. Our program's small but successful. We also have master's students who participate in our Kaplan during the summer. And hey, I had a student whose score went up 8 points. Which is just like mind blowing, right? So it is about just finding that way to just continue to give the individualized attention, But as we grow, that's what I'm concerned about, that we don't lose students, but we don't lose the part that makes my team special, is that you're one person to me. You're not a group. Even if you are in a group, it's one person. And we care about you and we're invested in you. And I want to be part to celebrate your successes, right? So, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for us, is just maintaining that level of relationship development that we've had throughout my tenure here, and maintaining that.
Similarly, at orientation, we're very clear on our expectations. We're very firm, and my line that I share with them all the time is, we don't just want them to succeed. I expect them to, right? And so, to whom much is given, much is expected, and we hold them to very high standards. And when you, hold them to high standards, they will, try to aspire and reach that. And when they don't, we need to develop a healthy response to failures and mistake making, because that is also part of the learning process too. And that's going to happen in medical school. It happens in life, right? And so, one step forward might mean 10 steps back, but the goal remains the same: medical school, right? And we talked about this whole idea of it, being not so linear, and making sure that we invite guest speakers who share their stories and their journeys. And I think that's important. But I would say, for those of you that are thinking about or already started the initial planning, make sure that you involve students in the planning process, because they will think of things that you have not thought of. So part of our advisory board, we invite students, medical students, and also college students and former alumni of the program to be engaged in the planning process. And I will tell you that has helped as well in thinking about things that maybe we didn't consider, like the bandwidth issues, accessibility, all of these things. We were so focused on the operational piece, we hadn't considered most of those issues that the students would come in with as far as accessibility and such. But thankfully, because we had students on the board, we were able to have these conversations and really think ahead and be prepared for the students, because again, we're serving a specific population. So again, knowing your population, knowing who you're going to serve, making sure that the committee or your board or your group that is implementing this program invites and includes past alumni or current medical students to help you and challenge you in ways, maybe in things that you didn't consider before. And keep planning. Again, this takes a lot of, it's a lot of behind the scenes work, but it's my favorite aspect of my job. It brings me, so much joy to see students realize their dreams. And I have no really part in that. I just have the honor of being a part of that process. And to see students come back as, physicians, or mail me their medical acceptance letter. Those are like, if there was a fire in the office, those would be the first things I would take. Because again, you become part of their story. You helped create a different narrative for them, especially for those that come to you that, have been told they can't, or they won't, or they believe those narratives that have been created for them by society. We tell them they can and they will. And we create systems and support systems to help them thrive in an environment that often doesn't look like them, and an environment that often works against them. So, the good work needs to continue.
Yeah. And I think words are so powerful, I never tell a student what they can't do. And I was very happy when I had an undergraduate student where the word was out on the street. Miss Shirley said I couldn't do anything. She's like, no, she didn't. I know she didn't. I know she couldn't tell you can't. Because she'll tell you, I don't know the extent of your aptitude or your attitude. Only you do. You only know what you have to do. But also, when I see a student's transcript that is not what will be considered competitive, I ask them, why do you think your transcript doesn't reflect your ability? I don't tell them this is a bad GPA. I don't say, why do you think you can do better? That's not the same thing. You believe it doesn't reflect who you are. What happened? what can you do differently? Because it's really about them getting to think critically about where they are and how they got here, rather than the individual course itself or the individual test itself. And they take that far much. It's not they don't take it as an insult, because it's like, you believe you can do better. Okay, let's make that plan. And I said, at the end of the day, it's your job to prove that to a medical school committee. What support do you need to make that happen? But it is your job to prove it. And once you prove it, then we'll move to then that's great. You've done that. So it is about choosing words that continue to provide life and encouragement. There are enough people who are going to be gatekeepers for them that need not be our job. Our job should be just to inspire, encourage, repair, and continue to provide them opportunities to explore, even if it's something else. Remind them, yes, there are many ways you can help, and medicine is one, but there are many.
So thinking about this coming summer, is there anything that either of you that you've considered doing differently to support whether to support the relationship building or the expectation setting? Is there something that you did last summer and you thought, well, that was okay, but this summer we're gonna try to do it differently?
I think for me, more of it in different ways, and more things for fun. They are just so uncomfortable right now, and everyone is, and recognizing that you're still here and this is difficult and you feel icky. Let's work on that. And this is where I have those conversations about mental health. Happiness is what you create. Your reality is something you created. You want a different reality. Well, how do you create it? Change your thinking, change your perspective, and it does give us the opportunity to teach them. They're very resilient already, but we give them an opportunity to be more purposeful in that. And this remind them, this is the sort of behavior you're going to need throughout your career. So it really is about engaging more in ways that have probably less to do with anything about medicine, because it's bigger than this. Life is bigger than even going to medical school. And we're just going to have things around life. And
so like Family Feud night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even with the Family Feud, the topics are wellness. The topics are related to their whole being, and they're having fun, but they're learning, they're engaging, they're expanding, their mindsets around different topics that maybe culturally might be a little taboo or, not spoken about. And so I agree with Shirley. It's much more than preparing them for the MCAT. You're preparing them for life, and how to be, beings in this world that are going to make this world a better place, but by taking care of themselves first, and recognize that they are whole beings and there are parts of themselves that they need to take care of before they take care of anyone else. And we always use the analogy of, when you're on an airplane, again, this is pre-COVID, when you're on an airplane and they say, if the mask come down, put it on yourself first before you put it on someone else. We use that analogy because, again, they can't take care of anyone else if they're not taking care of themselves and their whole selves. And so that might include physical, spiritual, mental, all of that, and providing resources where it's accessible. And so we have folks on our team that specialize on a variety of things, and many of them continue outside of the program, which is great. And we're developing physicians that are going to have healthy coping skills, right? Because we know it's one of the most stressful professions. We want to make sure that they attend to these, as pre-med students, as medical students, so they can manage some of that stress.
Yeah. And for me,
that's a really powerful silver lining, right? If we're thinking about these students and pipeline really imparting on them, like, take care of yourself and then you can take care of it. That's big.
And for me, even with my undergraduates and with them, is like, their life is more than medical school. Life is more than medicine. And if you ignore those parts of your life, they won't be there when you need them. So what are the things that make you happy today? What are the things that make you joyful when you were a kid? Pick them back up, incorporate them into your life. They feed your heart and your soul. They're important, you know? And so for me, it is really about them understanding that you can't ignore, then, you know, everything's not about medicine and everything's not about going to medical school. Not saying it's not important, but you need to not let the other parts of your interests and your passions and your joys go away because you're so focused on one, because you won't enjoy the ride of life. You'll get to a destination and you're like, what did I just do for the last 20 years of my life? And I don't want that for them. And we also know that leads to burnout, right? So it is about just having fun, doing some crafts, maybe, you know, doing virtual painting, having dinner together online, you know, group movie watching, things to just, and they could be about important things, but it probably won't be about medicine or science. Probably not. They'll probably make it up. I'm looking forward to this summer.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to end this hour together. I'll bring us back to the word we started with, which was reimagine. We talked about so many important and different topics today, but at the end of the day, you know, for the students, we just need to be there for them. And we just need to find new ways to help connect them with each other and really just make sure we set expectations and help them help themselves, right? To everyone's point here. So to that end, thank you so much again, Shirley and Nanette, for joining us. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Chris. I'm looking forward to this summer and getting back to a new norm. So thank you again, all. Thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, please let us know. And this is Dennis and Chris and Kim and Shirley and Nanette signing off. See you next time.
Thank you.